الرحيم الحمد لله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد اللهم صل وسلم وبارك وكرم بقدر عظمة ذاتك العلية في كل وقت وحين أبدا عدد ما علمت وزنة ما علمت ومثل ما علمت على سيدنا مولانا محمد صاحب التاج والمعراج والبراق والعالم ودافع البلاء والوباء والمرض والألم جسمه مطهر معطر منور من اسمه مكتوب مرفوع موضوع اللوح والقلم شمس الضحى بدر الدجى نور الهدى مصباح الظلم أبي القاسم سيد الكونين وشفيع الثقلين أبي القاسم سيدنا محمد بن عبد الله سيد العرب والعجم به الحرمين محبول عند رب المشرقين والمغربين يا أيها المشتاقون لنور جماله صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. Sidi Faisal has asked me to speak a bit about some insights on the history of Inshad and the background of Inshad. Ahmed ibn Faris, who is one of the people who wrote a lexicon on the etymology of Arabic language, has said that the stem nashada, these three letters, nun and sheen and dal, this is aslun sahih, يدل على ذكر شيء والتنويه به. Like the three letters of nun and sheen and dal, which formulate the stem for the word inshad, is the three letters themselves are root. So it's not a word that has got an additional letter, as many Arabic words, but it's actually a root on its own that indicates to mention something and to highlight it. Mentioning something and highlighting it. And the Prophet ﷺ says in his hadith, لا تحل لقطتها إلا لمنشد. Like the luqata, the picking up of a lost and found, is not allowable except for someone who is going to make it known. So munshid here doesn't mean someone who sings, it means someone who will he will pick up what is lost and he will make it known to people. So the stem nashada means to seek as well, means to know, means to ask, and means to seek guidance. تنشد الخبر علمه. Like to seek to know the news is to get to know them, to ask for them. When people ask someone close to them for a need, they say, ناشدتك Allah, I ask you by Allah, ناشدتك. So the essential meaning of the word inshad carries all of these dimensions. Seeking something, making something known. And we can see all of these meanings manifest in the Nashids, that they invoke the soul, and they invoke the presence of the soul, and they invoke the presence of the heart, and they introduce the beautiful meanings that cannot be expressed in normal conversation. They introduce them in the nice voice, they introduce them in something that is really subtle, but at the same time it's so manifest. As Shaykh Al-Habib Abu Bakr al-Mashhur says, كل منشد مرشد. Every munshid is a murshid. And they say, وكل حادي هادي. Every hadi is someone who sings behind the camels to make them move. Keep singing to the camels so that he encourages them with his voice to move on. So he says, كل حادي هادي. He guides as well. كل حادي هادي. The singing of poetry and the oration of poetry and turning poetry from just a text into a vocal thing has been quite prominent from the early days of Islam. Bearing in mind that Arabs were people of orality. They were not people of writing. Writing was not quite famous in Arabia. They were people who used to sing and they used to speak, and they were known for this weapon of the tongue, speaking, oration, singing poetry, and because that art itself required very strong memories and wide narration, so they had these phenomenal memories that memorized the poetry that is said, and not only that, but they have developed with that, sometimes spontaneously, sometimes even unconsciously, they have developed a talent of making their own poetry in response to each other. So we find Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala an meeting Amr ibn Wood. For example, Amr ibn Wood was a big fighter fighting on the side of Quraysh, and he was one of the iconic fighters in Arabia, meeting Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib in the Battle of the Trench. and speaking to him from behind the trench, and Sayyidina Ali responding to him in poetry, exchanging this poetry. Because poetry has been such a strong and important weapon, the Prophet ﷺ supported it. And the Prophet ﷺ, being an Arab, he liked it. He liked this word, this word that is so powerful. So among his companions, we find loads of poets. As some of the ulama have counted the poets during the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ, 200 poets from amongst the Sahaba. 200 men and women who said poetry. They even said that As-Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha كانت أشعر من الخنساء. She had more poetic talents than Al-Khansa, and Al-Khansa Tumadir bint Amr. She was one of the iconic female poets of Arabia. We know of a few of the Sahaba. The most iconic of them is Hassan ibn Thabit radiallahu ta'ala an, Abdullah ibn Rawaha, and Ka'b ibn Malik. And there is an interesting story that Sidi Abdul Hayy Kittani mentions about these three companions. That it was said to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Ya Rasulullah, they said to Sayyidina Ali first, radiallahu ta'ala an, Ya Ali, taqulu ash-shi'r, would you like to say poetry? فقال إن أذن لي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. He said, if the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam gives me permission, I will. فقيل له يا رسول الله إذن لعلي. They said, Ya Rasulullah, give permission to Ali. فقال إن عليا ليس عنده ما يراد في ذلك. Ali doesn't have what I want from him in that area. Ali does not have what I want from him in that area. But we, in fact, know that Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anh was very talented in poetry. We find the diwan of Sayyidina Ali, whether some of it is manhool or some, but Sayyidina Ali was by no means less in poetry than anybody else. That the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, ليس عنده ما يراد في ذلك. He doesn't have what I want from him in that area. And then he said, ما يمنع القوم الذين نصروا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بسلاحهم أن ينصروه بألسنتهم. What stops the people who supported the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم with their weapons to support him with their tongues? Just after he said about Sayyidina Ali, ليس عنده ما يراد في ذلك. He does not have what I want him to say on this area. What about those who supported me with their weapons? Why don't they support me with their tongues as well? He's referring to the Ansar. Hassan, Abdullah ibn Rawaha, Ka'b ibn Malik, the three of them were from the Ansar. So, and then Sayyidina Hassan ibn Thabit and and Ka'b ibn Malik, they started right away being specialists in an area of poetry where they will mention the old days of Quraysh and remind them of them and make Quraysh feel very embarrassed. While Abdullah ibn Rawaha's specialization was to kind of highlight how stupid the minds of Quraysh to worship idols. So one of them was focused on the ibadah of Quraysh, how stupid and how superficial it is, and the other two were specialists in poetry. So I actually thought about this. Why would the Prophet ﷺ say about Sayyidina Ali, لَيْسَ عِنْدَهُ مَا يُرَادُ فِي ذَلِكَ? Even though he actually had مَا يُرَادُ فِي ذَلِكَ. He had what would have been kind of required for this job. And I thought that there would be one way only to understand this, or one of the ways of understanding it is that مَنْعُهُ صلى الله عليه وسلم لعلي, like the fact that the Prophet ﷺ stopped Ali from saying poetry in criticism of Quraysh, because that would be criticism of Quraysh, is so that Quraysh does not criticize Quraysh. So that Quraysh does not criticize Quraysh. And so that Ali radiallahu ta'ala, when they go back to Mecca, they wouldn't say, oh, you have criticized us. So when you ask someone from a family to criticize the family, you are causing qat'ul arham. You are cutting the ties between them. But when you say to the Madinians, you can criticize Quraysh, well, at the end of the day, the Madinians are from another city. At the end of the day, it's another tribe. When someone criticizes from outside, it's different from someone who criticizes from inside. As the Arab poet says, وَظُلْمُ ذَوِي الْقُرْبَى أَشَدُّ مَضَاضَةً عَلَى الْحُرِّ مِنْ حَدِّ الْحُسَامِ الْمُجَرَّدِ. Like injustice that is done to you by one of your kith and kin, one of your relatives, is worse and more painful than the cutting of a sword. Then it is more painful than the sword cutting in your flesh. وظلم ذوي القربى أشد مضاضة على الحر من حد الحسام المجرد. We mentioned that not even that the Sahaba Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim had immense attachment to poetry, but in fact poetry was such a strong weapon that it saved the lives of people. And this is a story that we read every day, the story of Ka'b ibn Zuhair radiallahu ta'ala an, who came to the Prophet ﷺ after Fath Makkah apologizing after he used his own poetry criticizing the Prophet ﷺ, bringing people together against him, encouraging them to fight the Prophet ﷺ. And then the Prophet ﷺ said about specific individuals, if any of you sees them, you can kill them. Ka'b ibn Zuhair came, covering himself, saying poetry to the Prophet ﷺ. And when the Prophet and then when he completed his poem, the Prophet ﷺ gave him his cloak. That actually saved the life of Ka'b ibn Zuhair. So we can see poetry here saving the lives of people. We can see how poetry was such a strong, magnificent and important weapon. This Inshad of poetry, because this is the essence of Inshad. The Prophet ﷺ, even after he passed away, salawatullah wa salamu alayh, we find the Sahaba competing in saying poetry about him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, about him after he departed from physical world. We can see also that poetry was one of the weapons in war. When the Prophet ﷺ entered Mecca, he did not let anyone walk in front of him except Abdullah ibn Rawaha, entering Mecca and saying خلوا بني الكفار عن سبيله اليوم نضربكم على تنزيله ضربا يزيل الهام عن نقيله. Walk out of his way, clear his way, O sons of the disbelievers. And Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu was surprised, because he possibly has thought that the Prophet ﷺ will accept something like that happening. One of the things that we find today is a lot of people who don't read the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, they become rigid in their life. Because they see the Sahaba, or they think that the Sahaba were very rigid people who didn't smile. One of the things that literally struck me is Sayyidina Ubay ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu. Sayyidina Ubay ibn Ka'b was the Sahabi entrusted with fara'id, with dividing estates. He's the Afradukum Ubay. Like Ubay was the Sahabi that the Prophet said he's the most specialist, the most well-versed in dividing estate, the ilm al-fara'id. And on top of that, he was one of the iconic companions who taught the Quran. But they said, وَكَانَ لَهُ رَهْبَةً. He was a man of great awe and great presence. That people would, and that is what is required in a teacher. For a teacher sometimes, who teaches certain ulum, he has to be invoking a lot of respect and presence in his class. But then that's Ubay ibn Ka'b in public. But in private they said in his biography, وَلَكِنَّهُ كَانَ أَفْكَهَ النَّاسِ إِذَا خَلَى بِأَهْلِهِ. Like when he is with his family, كَانَ أَفْكَهَ النَّاسِ. He would be the most hilarious man. You're talking about Ubay ibn Ka'b, this one Sahabi who had such a great presence, but when he is with his family, he's not just smiley, he's not easygoing. وَكَانَ أَفْكَهَ النَّاسِ. يعني from fukaha. Like he was the most hilarious person. He was the most cheerful individual when it comes to his family. And that's Ubay ibn Ka'b. So sometimes when we read certain things, or when we imagine the companions, Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim, we find that or we think that they were people of rigidity, but the reality is they were people of ease, they were people of simplicity. We see that in the hadith الصحيحين عن عائشة رضي الله تعالى عنها. جاء حبش يزفنون. Like these Abyssinian young boys, young men, they came dancing. Zafana in Arabic means to make this kind of folklore dancing, moving back and forth. Something like what people do today in some cultures and some countries. What people have inherited from their ancestors. جاء حبش يزفنون في يوم عيد. Sayyidah Aisha narrates that these Abyssinian boys came doing this dance on the day of Eid, fil masjidi, in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. فَدَعَانِي صلى الله عليه وسلم. The Prophet ﷺ called me. And this is the riwayah of the Sahihain. Because the other riwayat say that I asked the Prophet ﷺ to look. But in the narration of the Sahihain, فَدَعَانِي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. The Prophet ﷺ called me. فَدَعَانِي صلى الله عليه وسلم. فَوَضَعْتُ رَأْسِي عَلَى مَنْكِبِهِ. I placed my head on his shoulder. Like she's standing behind him, looking at them and putting her chin on the shoulders of the Prophet ﷺ. فَجَعَلْتُ أَنْظُرُ إِلَى لَعِبِهِمْ. I kept looking at them, watching them. The wife here, Sayyidah Aisha, watching these boys moving and playing. حَتَّى كُنْتُ أَنَا الَّذِي أَنْصَرِفُ عَنِ النَّظَرِ إِلَيْهِمْ. Until I felt I had enough and I walked away. حَتَّى كُنْتُ أَنَا الَّذِي أَنْصَرِفُ. The hadith that we know about the two young girls singing on the day of Eid, and the Prophet ﷺ, and the hadith is clear. تُغَنِّيَانِ وَتَضْرِبَانِ بِالدُّفْ. They were singing and they were playing the daf. And Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala an, entering the chamber of the Prophet ﷺ, seeing them playing the daf and singing, and the Prophet ﷺ musajjab bithawbihi, he's just covering himself and kind of asleep, but listening to them ﷺ. فَقَالَ أَمَزْمُورُ الشَّيْطَانِ فِي بَيْتِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صلى الله عليه وسلم. Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu an said, he thought, like, you're doing that in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ? He, as Siri Abdul Hayy al-Kittani mentions, فَاسْتَعْظَمَ في قلبه الشريف أن ينشغل وقت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بذلك. Like he thought that the time of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم is more honorable to be used in listening to these girls. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم له دعهما يا أبا بكر فإنها أيام عيد. Leave them. These are the days of Eid. These are the days of celebration. These are the days of Eid. The other hadith of Sayyidah Salama رضي الله تعالى عنها, she said, دخلت علي جارية لحسان بن ثابت. One of the servants, the maids of Hassan ibn Thabit, a girl that was owned by Hassan ibn Thabit, came يوم فطر, on the day of Eid al-Fitr, ناشرة شعرها. Like her head was, her hair was all over the place. ناشرة شعرها. معها دف تغني, and she was holding a daf and playing. فزجرتها. Like I told her off. فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said to me, دعيها يا أم سلمة فإن لكل قوم عيدا وهذا عيدنا. Leave her. Every people have got their Eid, and this is our Eid as well. We even go beyond that. That Imam Ahmed narrates from Qais ibn Sa'd ibn Ubadah رضي الله تعالى عنه, قال ما من شيء كان على عهد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إلا قد رأيته. Like there is nothing that happened or that was done during the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ, except that I saw it. I saw you doing it after the Prophet ﷺ. إلا شيئا واحدا, except for one thing. كأن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يقلس له يوم الفطر. The qalasa in Arabic means to play and in moving, to do some kind of sporty games and some form of lahu, some form of playing games and with movement and sports. And the Prophet ﷺ would sit and watch that. كان يقلس له. He would ask sallallahu alaihi wasallam for the youth to do that in front of him. وقال جابر هو اللعب. Jabir ibn Abdullah, the companion, said this is playing games and moving in some kind of folklore like that. There is even between the ulama, they had a long discussion about the shape of the dufuf during the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ. How did they look? And we can even see among the Sahaba people who used to sit and listen. Abdullah ibn Amr, Abdullah ibn Zubayr, and so many more of them. Even the singers, the girls who used to sing during the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ, even these ladies who were known with their names, they were known specifically for being singers. Jamila and Hamama and many others who are mentioned by the ulama. One of the things that I actually, I don't want to go on and on about this, but one of the things that I really going to mention before I conclude is this story that Ibn Abdul Barr mentions. Imam Ibn Abdul Barr in his book Al-Isti'ab mentions in the biography of Sayyidina Khawat ibn Jubayr al-Sahabi radiyallahu ta'ala an, Khawat ibn Jubayr. He said, we went out for Hajj with Umar ibn al-Khattab. Now they are going to Hajj. We went out to Hajj with Umar ibn al-Khattab. فسرنا في ركب. We were in a caravan with Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah and Abdul Rahman ibn Auf. فقال القوم, the people, the Sahaba, Abdul Rahman ibn Auf and Abu Ubaidah, they said to Khawat, because he was a kind of a singer, غننا من شعر ضرار. Sing to us the poetry of ضرار ibn al-Azwar. فقال عمر, then Umar رضي الله عنه said, دعونا من شعر ضرار. Forget about the poetry of ضرار. فليغني من بنيات فؤاده. Let him sing his own poetry. Forget about the poetry of ضرار. Let him sing his own poetry. And when I thought, why would Sayyidina Umar رضي الله عنه request Khawat ibn Jubayr to sing his own poetry? It is because he would feel it. When you sing the poetry of somebody else, you don't have the experience, because poetry is the language of experience. When you say poetry, you go through a spiritual experience. Every poem has an experience, has a spiritual experience that has led to it. And no one can actually, that's why it's called Bunayyatul Fuad. It's the daughters of the heart. Literally, Bunayyatul Fuad, the daughters of the heart. He said, فَلْيُغَنِّ مِن بُنَيَّاتِ فُؤَادِ. Let him sing the daughters of his heart, meaning the verses that his heart has come up with, the things that he has experienced. Because when you turn that into singing, you will feel into it. You will be the best one to communicate the experience that you have been through in producing this. قال, then Khawat said, فَمَا زِلْتُ أُغَنِّي حَتَّى كَانَ السَّحَرُ. I continued to bear in mind they were going out to Hajj. They were going out to Hajj. So he said, I continued to sing until the time of Sahar, before Fajr. فقال عمر يا خوات ارفع لسانك فقد سحرنا. It is time for you to stop. It is time for Sahar now. And I thought that possibly because this is the time of Ibadah now. Also, this is the balance that Sayyidina Umar is bringing. Yes, let him sing, but when it's the time of Sahar, this is the time of Qiyam. To the level that Umar radiallahu anhu said, Al-Ghina'u Zadul Rakib. That singing is the provision for a traveler. It makes him forget the travel. It makes him think. It gives him some form of kind of relaxation with himself. One of the things that I was thinking about on my way here, what are we really missing in Inshad? Where can we fulfill the duty of the time about Inshad? I believe that so far Inshad has been, especially at this time that we're in, is open for each and everyone. Everyone who thinks that his voice is nice, he just goes into Inshad. Khalas. And we live in a culture where there are no boundaries between specialization and specialists and non-specialists. Anyone who thinks he can sing, they just become singers. And I believe that since Inshad is an art, and it's a very well-established art, and big part of it is ilm actually, is knowledge, there is a need for the munshideen who have received this art with chains of transmission from the specialists to sit down and do taqeed of this ilm, write down the rules of this ilm. Possibly they can write something on adab al-munshid, the etiquettes of the munshid. Who can be a munshid? Sifatul munshid. The etiquettes of Inshad. What should you do before you do the Nasheed session and after you do it, and how should the munshid conduct himself in public and in private. It's an area that actually needs focus. People also should write on al-ulum allati yahtaju al-munshid, the sciences that the munshid requires. Because we are singing what we would call sacred words. So these sacred words require, for example, traditionally the munshidun have been qurra of the Quran. They were very well versed in reciting the Quran. So they must have mastered ulum tajweed, for example. They have mastered tajweed. They have mastered ilm al-maqamat, the tones, the musical tones. They must have mastered or had essential knowledge of Arabic grammar, balagha, rhetoric, and arud, prosody. These ulum that relate to poetry, that what we would call thaqafatul munshid, building this kind of the mentality of a munshid, so that the munshid has a taste when he chooses the words, so that the munshid is able to be kind of creative in what he's going to sing. I don't like the munshids who repeat themselves. Like the munshid becomes known for one qasida or for two. We need to address the needs of our time. Also, that the munshid has to have a good memory, because he should have enough of poetry in his mind. So he should have a good taste. He should have a basic knowledge of Arabic language. He should have quite a solid knowledge of maqamat and tones. Some munshideen, for example, they can't go beyond one or two maqams, and that's it. They can't move from, all their life they will sing bayat and nahawan, for example. Or they will stay only in nahawan, and they can't go to Rast or Hijaz or anything like that. The munshid should be well versed enough in the maqamat, and should at least train himself to diversify the way of his delivery, so that people will feel connected, because this will be a service of the world. Inshallah ta'ala, we can come up with this suggestion that any of you, inshallah, our brothers here can fulfill, and start writing. Possibly even it can start as an article, and then the article can become a book, and the book can become, inshallah, a group of books. Each one of them focuses on something, and then possibly people can even look into establishing like a diploma in Inshad, so that people, when they graduate, then we know who is actually a specialist and who is an amateur, and who is just misleading us. If they say al-munshid, murshid, that the munshid is a murshid, so we shouldn't let anyone mislead us. Now, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.